Welcome back to Torchlit Gaming. I'm John and this is Justin, and today we are going to take a little break from our show and tell series that we've been enjoying bringing to you, and we've got something a little different. Today we're going to go into a good old-fashioned top 10 list. So for our top 10 list, we're going to do our favorite games. We're going to actually break this down into two episodes. Today we're going to go over our honorable mentions and we're going to count down from number 10 to number 6. So next time you see us, we'll be counting down from number 5 to number 1. Um, so a few ground rules. We had a very strict limit of one game per series,
Mm.
which was harder than you might expect, especially when you think about something like Final Fantasy where there's so many games. We could only come up with one. Um, so we could choose any reason. For me, this is not me saying, "Oh, these are the best games ever." It's just me saying these are my favorite games, and that could be for a number of reasons. It could be just fun factor, could be your favorite story. It could be nostalgia, combination of all of those. For my list, I can tell you music was important. You'll hear me reference different soundtracks and the composers throughout our videos. We also want to caution that there are some spoilers that may come up. Justin, I don't know how many spoilers you have, but I might have a few, so we'll try to let you know that. And then we're going to go back and add some chapters to this video so that if you come across a game that you don't want spoiled, that you can just click ahead to the next chapter so you can avoid that. Um, Justin is going to start us off properly for this list. You have any thoughts about before we get started on top 10 games overall or
Yeah, so this list was very hard to make. I tried to avoid, like, I'm a big RPG guy, but I try to avoid putting only RPGs on here or only Final Fantasy games on here. And that was very difficult. The other thing is, like, I wanted to try to, like, make sure that it gave a good window into how long I've been playing games because I've been playing games for a very long time. Like, I mean, I don't even know. So, that's one thing I wanted to try to make sure I got across. So, and like you said, there's going to be spoilers. Probably most of my games are going to be spoilers, unless I really think that the spoilers would take a huge part away from the game. Because some of the games I mentioned, the spoilers are like it. So, anyway, that's all I had.
all right, well, you're up first. We're going to go honorable mentions first. So what do you have for us in the way of honorable mentions?
All right. So, my honorable mentions are I have Gears of War, I have Halo 2. I have Inscription. I have Dungeon Encounters, which I think people are going to be very shocked that that's on my list, and Aria of Sorrow. So just real quick, while why I chose all these games in my honorable mention, Gears of War and Halo 2, they kind of are on this list for the same reason, is that the multiplayer was phenomenal. It's probably like the best part of these games. Halo 2, I mean, I like the single player. It's pretty memorable, but multiplayer is where it's at. Dungeon Encounters, I highly recommend playing it. It's a very stripped down version of an RPG where you're going on a grid with your party, and it's the creator of the active time battle system from like all the different Final Fantasy games. He actually, I believe, directed this game. And so he implemented his updated version of the ATP battle system, and it's great. There's a challenge. It's very minimal on graphics, but I think it does it a service because it actually brings the gameplay. The gameplay is the main focus of the game, which I think is amazing. Aria of Sorrow, I think that's one of the best Metroidvania, Castlevania games. Symphony of the Night's up there, but overall, I think Aria of Sorrow is like the best culmination of all those. I think Bloodstain might have been on my honorable mentions if we had more, but Aria of Sorrow is it. And then Inscription, this is easily the 11th spot on my list. It's it's such an amazing game, and this is one of the few games I'm not going to spoil because it's an experience in itself, and nothing is what it seems. It seems like a card game at its front. Oh man, I probably was too much, but the card game is the key focus, and the way it builds is incredible. And I think solving the mystery of the cabin is probably one of the best parts of the game. Um, I highly recommend it, and that's why I chose these for my honorable mentions. So, all right, John, it's on you now.
Okay, yeah, and as we go through this video, we're each going to have reactions to all of our games. So my quick takes, some of your games I know better than others, but my quick takes, I think you nailed it with Aria of Sorrow because I think that's clearly the better of those three games that are on Game Boy Advance.
Hmm.
Um, just fun, fun game, really good. They really just streamlined everything. They got the map really, really down pat. The souls system and everything, equipping the souls is really fun and strategic. There's so many different combinations.
Yep.
The music, I think, is more improved from the other games in the trilogy, the Game Boy Advance trilogy. Yeah, as far as a handheld game, I can see why it's in your honorable mention. Halo 2 is I'm big on all the Halo games, but I'm interested that you chose Halo 2. I think it's a good choice. I also think it's not the most obvious choice because it's considered to be the hardest game of all the Halo games. It's very difficult, um, especially if you try to turn up the difficulty to like legendary or heroic. But it's a really good game. Yeah, I like the story too. But yeah, like you said, multiplayer was really where a lot of us spent the hours when we were playing these games. But Gears of War, same thing. You put into first-person shooters, and those are both definitely worthy games. I think Gears of War is, it reminds me of Halo in a lot of different ways,
Yeah.
and it has good multiplayer, has a good campaign. The weapons are good. The voice acting is pretty good. I think the voice acting in Halo is like maybe even a step above. Um, I know a little less about your other games, but what I do know about Inscription is that it's basically creepypasta the game. Um, it does remind me of one of my honorable mentions, which is Hand of Fate 2,
Yeah.
because the similarities of being a card game, not necessarily like the big twists. I know Inscription's a little on the shorter side, but the story is highly praised, and there's definitely some twists. And I'm glad that you aren't going to go into any spoiler territory because I think that would take away from the game for a lot of people. And then Dungeon Encounters, Hitoyuki Ito, that's the creator of the active time battle system, and he also was responsible for that game. From what I know about it, it's not very story driven, but it is very heavy on the exploration aspect, and it
Hmm.
plays like a Final Fantasy game. So, um, all in all, those are good picks, and uh, you may see some of those franchises make my lists too. That's all I can say. So I'm gonna go ahead and go into my honorable mentions. Um, I've got, as mentioned already, I've got Hand of Fate 2, Live a Live remake. Um, I've got Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Kong Quest. I've got Skyrim. Uh, I've got Snatcher for Sega CD, and I've got Super Mario All Stars and Super Mario World. So, real quickly, I'm gonna go through these games. Hand of Fate 2, it's a card game. It's like a really weird genre bending type game where it's partially a card game, but it's also like a fighting game. And Hand of Fate 1 is also really good and worth your time, but they really polished it more with the second one. I've, played through and I got 1,000 gamer score in Hand of Fate 1, or I think I did the expansion too, so there's actually more than 1,000, but then the same thing in Hand of Fate 2. So I played through all the games. I will say they are exploitable. Like there's really easy exploits that you can do in that game that you can manipulate everything. Which, Yeah, if you're trying to get all the achievements or trophies, you might take advantage of that. But just to enjoy the game as it is, it's fun. It's pretty dark. It kind of reminds me of like I don't know, like maybe something in the Forgotten Realms because of just how dark is the story is. But it's really fun. The battles are fun. The bosses are fun. The cards are fun. Actually, in Hand of Fate 2, you get like special cards that weren't in the first one, like brimstone cards and platinum cards that have really special effects. Um, and you could get like brimstone encounters, like that are supercharged battles and stuff. So really good game. It's just very very unique. Like if you haven't played it, it's one of those things. Probably like Inscription. Like you got to play it to really get it. But Live a Live the remake, have it right here, Nintendo Switch version. The original game is cool. You know, obviously this is a Square Enix RPG. The original game is cool. It's got 8 different scenarios that you start with, and then when you're done with the 8 scenarios, you unlock like a final scenario. But they all tie in together really nicely. And if you ever listen to Torchlit Gaming podcast, you'll hear me and Justin talk about Live a Live. We actually went into pretty significant detail on this game.
Yeah.
We both agreed that we enjoy the is it the distant future is our favorite. Distant future is our favorite scenario with the cube. There's a
Yeah.
cube on the bottom and the middle. But Live a Live's really a good. I mean, it's well done. The one thing I'll say about the remake, I don't really like the voice acting a lot. There's some reasons it's not in my proper top 10, but it's really fun for a turn-based RPG. It's hard to keep making fun and original turn-based RPGs that are still playable in modern consoles, but they did a good job with that. They stayed true to the original, but they also put a lot of nice graphical twists and upgrades on it. Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest. Got it right here. Super
Oh,
Nintendo. It's my
there you go.
original game. Um, and for a long time, I never realized that Diddy's Conquest is actually a pun. It means conquest. So I never knew that when I was growing up, but that was just kid me. Yeah, I think
Wait,
Justin might have just got it. So Diddy's
ah,
Conquest. Diddy's Conquest. So yeah, I never knew that, but it's
there you
important to know,
go.
huh?
Learn something new
But
every day.
to me, this is like almost as high up as you can get when it comes to like a 16-bit platform game. Um, it's just got such polished platforming. It's the difficulty is right in the middle. Like I think all the three main Donkey Kong countries that were on Super Nintendo kind of starts like moderate difficulty. This one's like just right in the middle, and then 3 is like really crazy. They tried to increase the difficulty, but it's still fun. But to me, this one's just like the perfect combination. The music is super good. A soundtrack by David Wise is right up there with anything that you're going to get on the Super Nintendo sound chip. I got Skyrim, such a landmark of a game. Here it is on Xbox 360. It's just this one was Game of the Year awarded. It's a landmark. It's we talked about Oblivion being remastered recently on our last show and tell,
Yep.
and this built off of everything Oblivion did. This just built off of it. The voice acting is phenomenal. You got the Jeremy Sule soundtrack that's phenomenal. Yeah, that the performances, like this is not just voice acting. This is like full performances. Um, it's just what can you really say about Skyrim? I'll let you fill in the blanks on that one. Snatcher, Sega CD version, Hideo Kojima. Just a wacky story, fun game. It's got a lot of point and click adventure to it, but it also has pretty cool voice acting for its time. It was actually, I think, I don't know, in the mid '90s, early '90s, it was probably you know in the early days of having cutscenes and having voice acting in games. So I think they did a pretty good job for that time. Yeah, I'm a big Snatcher fan, big Hideo Kojima fan. And then my last game is Super Mario All Stars and Super Mario World. Um, there's the Super Mario World on Super Nintendo. For obvious reasons, I said that Donkey Kong Country 2 was about as good as it gets for platforming 16-bit. Well, this is the peak. This is the peak right here of platforming on 16-bit, in my opinion. But yeah, that's my honorable mentions, Justin, and I'm sure some of those jump out at you.
Yeah, so we talked about Live Alive, and like you said, I actually have tried to beat it. I'm actually stuck. I'm stuck on the which one is that? The one with the psychic near future, I think, or like the very. I'm at the end, I think, where I have to fight that crazy ass mechanical key thing
Bird.
from. I don't. No,
Yeah.
it's when you're doing the infiltration on that building and you're trying to do whatever. I can't remember. It's been a minute, but yeah, I'm stuck there because it's like the power level between the boss and you is so wide. You do like n almost no damage, and it has like 3,000 hit points, and it's crazy. But that game's great. Yes, voice acting could use some work, but that's okay. Skyrim, what can you say about Skyrim that hasn't already been said? I mean, it's it's pretty much it's pretty close to a perfect Western first-person RPG that you can get, in my opinion. I think I think most first-person RPGs are trying to like reach the same high that Skyrim reached. Um, but that's whatever. Donkey Kong Country 2. I've played and beaten Donkey Kong Country 2, but like the one that I had the most nostalgia for is the third one that you mentioned. Um I played that a lot as a kid. Um I found all the secrets and the Easter eggs and all that. Mario All-Stars, Super Mario World, I'll have more on that. Snatcher's a great game. The story, oh, and one thing for me that always, you know, caught me was I'm actually a huge fan of the band Joy Division, and Hideo Kojima is as well. And I'm pretty sure it's Snatcher that he put a Joy Division reference into. So it was kind of cool to be like, oh, hey. So that's all cool. And Hand of Fate, I played Hand of Fate 2 when it came out. I'm a card game guy. We know this, so it was in my wheelhouse. Plus, I love roguelikes, roguelite, roguelikes, all those rogues, whatever you want to call them. Like card game, roguelike, any of those, I'll play them. So that was what it was. So I guess we're ready to do our top 10 list. So I guess we'll start
Yep.
at number 10, and we'll go
Number
with
10.
mine first. So I did a terrible segue into this, but my top 10 game of all time for me is Super Mario All-Stars and Super Mario World, which was on your honorable mention, so it's pretty funny. But for me, I think, there's been plenty of remakes and remasters before Mario All-Stars, but I really think that Mario All-Stars is what kind of kicked off the idea that remakes and well, it's pretty much a remake because it's remaking the whole thing in a new engine. But anyway, so it kind of kickstarted the whole remake idea that, oh, people do want to play upscale or new versions of these games. And even though the um what's the word? The physics are a little off from the other games, I still think the 16-bit of it is great, being able to play those. Super Mario World, however, is easily one of the greatest platformers ever made. It is very difficult to um, argue with that point. I mean, hell, it's so well loved that people have taken the framework that was created there and have created ROM hacks to make it harder with like the Kaizo Mario series and everything like that. So, you can go on YouTube and watch all sorts of crazy Mario hacks and it's based on Mario World because they got everything right the first time there. So, that's one of those games where I play the hell out of it. Like I've probably owned like 10 different versions of that game. Super Nintendo, Game Boy Advance, Wii, Wii U, Switch. I'm sure GameCube had it. I don't think 64 had it. No, it only has 64 games. But yeah, like I've rebought that game so many times. Like Nintendo's making their money off me, that's for sure. But that was my number 10. Did you have anything to add other than what you've already said with your honorable mention?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, this is my original version of the game, but it's worth it. Rebuying it on every they definitely. So here's my thing about it is first of all, I'm glad that you picked this as your top 10. Um, and I'm going to explain why in our next episode. There's a
Okay.
specific reason. There's a specific reason that I'm glad you picked this, but I'm gonna go. You'll have to wait till the next episode to hear that. Um, so yeah, for 16-bit platforming, you're not gonna find anything better. To me, this is the best way. The Mario All Stars version to me is the best way to experience the 8-bit games too.
Yeah.
Um, I love the graphical upgrade that it got from 8 to 16-bit. And I know purists will probably argue and be like, no, playing it on 8-bit is the only way. Um, but I love the graphical upgrade. There's
Yeah.
also an audio upgrade that it received, and the SNES sound chip, we talked about that on our podcast too, is, superior sound chip. Um, you mentioned the physics, and they did tweak the physics a little bit, and I think it's for the best. Mario is famous for having the momentum-based physics, and I think they do a good job of that with Super Mario All Stars. Um, how about the ability to save your game?
Oh yeah.
They included that in Super Mario All Stars. You can actually save after, like, for example, Mario 1, 2, or 3. After you complete a world, you can save it. So that wasn't there. In Mario 1, you couldn't save. In Mario 2, you couldn't save. I don't know. Could you save in Mario 3? I can't remember. On NES if you could or
Mm,
not.
I don't
So that's another
remember.
that's another factor that gives it a big check in my book for Mario All Stars is just that ability to save after you beat a world. And all your favorite games are included in this compilation. You got iconic soundtracks by Koji Kondo, some of his best and most recognizable tunes. Like everybody knows if you hum do 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 do, everybody knows what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's Koji Kondo, who I'll be talking about more in our list, in my list at least. How about the lost levels?
Yeah,
The best
that's
way
yeah.
to play the original lost level was a Famicom disk system, but to me, this is by far the best way to play the lost levels. You get the graphical upgrade and everything. It is a very punishing challenge. I'm willing to admit it. I haven't beat it, and I don't know if you have or not, but if you have, you're a better gamer than I am.
Oh, before we continue, so fun fact about Lost Levels. I was actually watching an interview with, I can't remember what it was, like what the documentary or whatever it was, but they were talking to it might have been the gaming historian maybe, but I don't remember. They were talking about how the Nintendo team that actually receives the games from Japan to decide what they want to bring over to America. They got a whole box of games in, and usually when it's a high profile release like Mario 2, Mario 3, whatever, they send it over like, hey, this is going to be the next Mario, and they're like, oh, sweet. Well, this lady was recalling how she was on the team that was supposed to be in charge of marketing and deciding what games Americans will like and all that kind of stuff. And she remembers that they received a box of just random Famicom Disk System games, and there was no heads or tails as to what was in the box. It was just like, hey, these are some games that the Americans might like. What do you think? And she says she remembers digging through the box to see what was what, and Mario 2 was in there, just thrown in there. There was no indication that this was going to be a high profile release from Nintendo or anything when it came over from Nintendo Japan. It was just tossed in there. So, I think Nintendo of Japan, even before, like, immediately after they released it to the Japanese public, I think they kind of had an idea of like, oh, this might be too challenging for Americans. Like that was a whole dynamic that it was there for a while. That's why we got Mystic Quest and stuff like that, is because there was this ongoing idea between Japanese and Americans that Americans don't like hard games. So that's why I think that's why they passed on releasing the Lost Levels originally. Well, it was Super Mario 2, but that's why they originally passed on it. But they still needed a game to, serve the gap. And then that's when the Doki Doki Panic thing and all that, and that got reworked. But I just thought it was interesting that, you know, now, like seeing it in All Stars and seeing it, it's like a celebrated game. Like, oh, this is a harder Mario 1, basically. And, you know, we didn't get it originally, but apparently we were supposed to, but it was more of like a than a like a serious concrete thought that we should get it. So anyway, that's one thing I wanted to share because I thought it was interesting.
And just having all those games in one package is, it's not no surprise why Super Mario All Stars is one of the top selling games for the system for the
Yeah,
SNES.
absolutely.
I think it is the number one best selling system, uh, a number one best selling game for the system, I believe. I'll let you check on that, but I'm going to go to my number 10 now. Um, so for number 10, and I have spoilers, so here's my spoiler alert. If you don't want to hear it, skip this chapter, skip to the next chapter. So my game is Mother 3,
Mm,
and this is going to be the only handheld game that makes my top 10. I'm choosing this game over Earthbound because I think it's more polished. Um,
no, you're right.
Earthbound's great. Yeah, Earthbound is great in its own ways, of course. Um, but I really like everything that Shigesato Itoi did with Mother 3. One of the most wanted games to get a modern release since it's never been localized. But it's one of the games that people are clamoring for, and for good reason.
It's
So
an
when I played
understatement.
Mother 3, yeah, uh, when I when I played Mother 3, I felt like this is a game that anything can happen. It's just one of those wacky, out of pocket plots where anything can happen. But at the same time, it's very um, it's very emotional, especially for a game on Game Boy Advance on a handheld system. The struggles that the characters go through are surprising, as how and how emotional the scenes that you get are. It's a little surprising. The characters are pretty sympathetic. Um, so here's an example. In the beginning of the game, and this is why I said there were spoilers. In the beginning of the game, the player's mother, is killed. Um, Later on in the game, there's a whole chapter where you're following her spirit through a flower field.
Mm.
Um, the final boss of the game turns out to be your brother. So it's there's a big twists in the game, and that's one of the big twists. Go play the game. Don't just listen to the spoilers. Um, when I said sympathetic characters, you've got a lot of characters that people like and relate to. Like there's a monkey, and he's constantly being abused by his the evil master. His name is Facade. Um, so you end up feeling sympathetic for some of these characters. Um, the soundtrack is by Shogo Sakai. I think it's an underrated soundtrack, especially for a handheld console. Pretty well done. Um, and in this top 10, I will mention a few things about games that were minor criticisms, and I have a minor criticism with this game, and that is the rhythm combat. It's not my favorite. It's something unique that most games didn't try and don't try, but I'll give it that it's unique. But I'm not a huge fan of the rhythm combat, which has a lot to do with like the song that's playing, and the rhythm that's playing in the individual battle that you're in. But overall, I played through this game. I had really good time with it. Have good nostalgia for it. It makes you feel like anything can happen. The plot twists and turns in lots of different directions that are unexpected. Good characters. I love Earthbound, but to me, this was more polished, a better telling of the story. Um, and that's pretty much all I have to say about Mother 3.
So for me, I played it for a few hours, honestly. I've never beaten it. I know the whole story. I've watched a whole explanation video on it. So like I know about all the twists and turns and whatever. But for me, the more fascinating thing about this game is its development cycle and like the continued um the continued the way how can I so the way that Nintendo of America has continued to hold this game hostage over 20 years, however long it's been, I don't know. It's like a lot of fans are asking for it, but they're just like I've heard rumors over the years that they have a full translation. They're just not releasing it for whatever reason. It could be copyright, it could be whatever. It's hard to say. Of course we have the fan translation. Actually, I think I've shown a repro cart on show and tell of that I own.
Same
So
one
I
that I
mean,
played.
and so there are ways to experience the game, and the English translation that we do have is very well done. And I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like, you know, I think the most interesting thing is if you go back in time to the Nintendo 64 and you look at Earthbound 64 and you look at the plot and you look at the characters and you look at the footage that they showed off during that time period, Mother 3 is a one-to-one remake is like one-to-one recreated on the Game Boy Advance. Like the minecart scene and all this other stuff. Like all of it's in there. Like they had a vision and they stuck to it. Now, will we ever get this game in America? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe my grandkids will. I don't know. But it's one of those things where there's been a whole lot of we had that emulation podcast not too long ago where we talked about the pros and cons or whatever. And it's like the whole idea of emulation has started to pick up again because of the Switch 2 and how it's handling Switch 1 backwards compatibility. And it's like, people are like, "Oh, well," and they had the whole EULA thing where it's like, "Oh, we'll break your console if you try to hack it or emulate or whatever." And it's like, yeah, that's great, but you're not giving us the games we want. What choice do we have? That's purely my opinion. I'm not telling you to go out and steal or whatever, but it's like it's it makes me think the internet is smaller than it actually is, only because you would think with all these different like campaigns that they have, like, hey, release Mother 3, and then even the president of Nintendo is making jokes about it, like it seems kind of shitty. That's all I'm gonna say. So yeah, so the Mother games are great in general. One, two, and three. I mean, we got Earthbound Beginnings. Why the hell haven't they released Mother 3? Like, it makes no sense to me. Like, they went back and translated the English, they translated the very first game on NES that has no relevance whatsoever and released that. And they released Star Fox 2. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But whatever. I don't work at Nintendo, so maybe they know something I don't. Anyway, that was a ramble about Mother 3.
No, it could be like a legal situation, but
Yeah,
hard to know what's going on behind the scenes. But it's just go out and play Mother 3, everybody. Just go out and play
yeah.
Mother 3.
Just however you can. All right.
All right, I think you're up for number 9.
All right, cool. So this next game, um, we're gonna stay in the Super Nintendo era for just a little longer. I actually have a lot to say about this game. So my number nine is going to be Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. Now, this might be controversial for a lot of people because everybody's like, Ocarina of Time's the best Zelda. And while I do love Ocarina of Time, especially the title screen, which I can just put on and just have playing in the background with that one song over and over until I die, that's great. But this is the game, this game and Final Fantasy IV um, are the games that made me want to become a game developer, which I'm still trying to do, even though I'm 40 years old, but it doesn't matter. But these games made me realize, even at such a young age, like I was like 5, 6, 7 when these games came out. Like, I was like, that's what I want to do in my life. I want to make video games because when you play Link to the Past, at that point in time, all we had was the Super Nintendo, and it just felt like such a grand adventure. Like, I remember as a kid, being really into like medieval stuff, like knights and dragons and all that stuff. And like, this just feels like being able to have my own medieval adventure, like whenever I wanted, you know? And if you were to tell like 5, 6 year old me that Zelda would be like an ongoing thing into my 40s, I would think that you're insane. But here we are. We just got Echoes of Wisdom and Tears of the Kingdom just not that long ago. And it's like they keep, you know, I feel like they're starting to kind of see Zelda as like an experimental series for them, where they can kind of like experiment with different gameplay ideas like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom and Echoes of Wisdom, hell. And it is working, and I think it's great, and they're keeping it fresh, so that's cool. But for me, this is where it all started. The first and second Zelda, they're good, they're classics, but there are so many hidden things, like the Chris Houlihan room. Shout out to Chris Houlihan for winning that contest, but having a debug room. Um, like there's all those little like you can go under a bridge and get a bottle, which you can save a fairy in, and it's like, who thinks of this stuff? But and then and then when you get to the end and you go and you're in the light world and you fight Aghanim and you beat him and you're like, yes, I beat the game. But no, you didn't. Because then there's the whole dark world, and then you got to find Ganon, and then you're just like, man, this game never ends, but it's great. I play this game all the time, so it's like I love Link to the Past. It's my favorite, and it's kind of what every Zelda past Link to no, every Zelda after Link to the Past kind of you can see the DNA in that, like Link's Awakening, both for Game Boy and the remake, the other Game Boy ones. I can't think of the name right now. Oracle's
Oracle
Seasons and
Pages.
Ages, yeah. Ocarina of Time, of course, Wind Waker, like all of them all owe something to Link to the Past, I think. Um, so yeah, I think it's one of the best, and you know, and rip my strategy guide that I got. It had a tragic accident and is destroyed. And when I looked up prices for a new one on eBay, they were $80. So I was like, well, I guess I'll just keep a destroyed one. Oh
You
man,
you
but
never don't know what you got till it's gone.
yeah, exactly. I may still have the text messages where I was telling, or maybe I called my wife. I can't remember which, but I'm like, "Oh my God, it's ruined," and she felt so bad, dude. It wasn't like anybody's fault. It was just some stupid shit. But she was like, "Man, that really sucks." But anyway, um, what are your thoughts on Link to the Past? I'm sure I know you've played Link to the Past. I'm sure of it, right? Like,
Yep.
yeah, I thought so.
I've
Okay,
I played Link to the Past a few times. There's
there you
my
go.
original copy. So
I'm
here's
so
when
jealous.
this, let's see, when did this come out? This came out in 1992, 90, no.
192, 192, somewhere in there.
Okay, it says copyright 91 Nintendo, so I'm going with that. But when this, around the time when this came out, I went to the, I went to the video game store with my dad. I don't know if it was a Walmart or Toys R Us or what it was, but I went to the store with my dad and he got me this game. I guess I don't remember. I don't know if I recommended it or somebody else said, "Hey, this is game," or it had TV commercials. I don't know which one, but I remember this being like $70 at the time that it was. The MSRP. I remember it being like $70 for some reason, even though I'm not the one who paid for it. But I loved this game right away. I did get a little stuck because I was, maybe let's see, in '91, I was pretty young, so I got a little stuck when I was playing because the part early in the game where you're like going through the sewers, or like to get to the sewers, you have to like push the king's throne to the side,
Hmm.
and then it exposes the hole. Like I wasn't even that good to figure out that you had to push the throne to the side to get into the sewer, so I got stuck at that part for a little bit. But then as I got older, maybe I was looking through Nintendo Power. I don't know. I picked the game back up and then I started getting good, as they say. But yeah, I love this game. It's a legendary adventure. It's a great adventure game. It's probably the best adventure game on the Super Nintendo. It's got an epic quest. And the game, the original games on NES had epic quests too, like Zelda 1, Zelda 2. It was in that direction, but this just enhanced everything with 16 bits. Um, it made it that much more, epic of a quest. And like you said, the light world and the dark world was like a mind blown moment. It's like, oh my god, there's a whole other, like, you get the three pendants for the first three dungeons, and then you fight Aghanim, and then you think that the game is over. And then you find out, like you were talking about secrets like the bottle under the bridge. How about the fact that you can use the bug catching net to reflect the attacks of the wizard
Yeah.
when he's shooting at But I digress. But you get the three pendants. You beat Aghanim. You get the Master Sword, and then you find out there's a whole other world to go to. And then you go to the Dark World. And then, by the way, when you're getting the sword upgrades, you just feel like way more powerful. Like Link, you're like, whoa! Like I was just playing with kids' toys before, and this little sword that your uncle gives you in the sewer. Uh, and
It's
then
like a kitchen
you go
knife.
from that, you get the Master Sword, and then all of a sudden, like you can shoot, energy beams when you have full hearts, and you feel way more powerful. And just that sound effect, that primitive sound effect, the 16-bit when you're slashing at your sword. And how about like just having fun, just cutting bushes and grass, and like, I'm gonna mow all the grass on this screen, type of thing. That's the kind of thing you would do, in those early games and when we were kids. But
Pegasus
um,
boots
yeah,
just running everywhere.
yep. The just the Dark World having so much to do in that, and and switching between worlds, like you have to go from light to dark, and then there's all these puzzle solving. Um, it's a really satisfying game. It's fun to find the secrets. It's fun to find all the hidden heart pieces. The dungeon design is like perfect. The way, I mean, and that's repeated in a lot of Zelda games, but the dungeon design is really satisfying. You feel smart when you solve a puzzle and you hear the chime. It's like do 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 do, and you
Yeah.
feel like, oh man, I'm smart. Like I just figured it out. Like all the dungeons, basically, you have a compass. You get the compass, then you get the keys, then you get the map, then you fight the mini boss, then you get the big key, then you find the special item of that dungeon, then you fight the big bad boss. And it's a really good loop that just keeps repeating over and over again.
Yeah.
Uh, it's Koji Kondo again, same guy who made the Mario music. He made the soundtrack for this game, and it's legendary. Fantastic soundtrack for Link to the Past. Just how powerful he feels. This is also one of those games that's like incredibly, people will never stop trying to find ways to break games. So I'm
Yep.
gonna let you take a guess. I'm gonna let you take a guess as to what's the speed run record, including glitches. Like all glitches are allowed. What do you think would be the speed run record for this game?
If I had to guess, I'm gonna say 3.5 minutes.
It's 1 minute and 28 seconds. And it basically involves just like walking from Hyrule Castle all the way to the screen that Ganon. You actually walk past the screen that Ganon's on and walk into the Triforce room. Um, but yeah, it's a great game. I'm glad I played this, and I played it when I was young, and it just opened a lot of doors to me and got me interested in other games and got me interested in the Zelda series. I had very limited experience. I played the NES Zelda at friends' houses when I was really young, but this is the first one that I owned, so this was the first one like I beat and everything, and it's definitely a holds I hold it in very high regard, and I can see why you chose it over any Zelda game. Even though some people would be have some minor shock at that, I can see why you chose it.
Yeah, one other thing I wanted to add was I forgot that it does a really you mentioned how, you start feeling more and more powerful as you go on, but it did a really good job of when you first get into the dark world, they take all that power away and turn you into a harmless rabbit. And you just have to navigate as this rabbit, and you're like, what is even going on right now? What the? And then you have to figure out how to like be able to exist in the dark world because whatever. Um, I want to just add before we go on that there's actually a legit sequel to this game on the 3DS that is also incredible. Link Between Worlds. If you've never played it, I highly recommend it. It does a great job incorporating the 3D effect of the 3DS. I highly recommend playing it with that. Unless you're sensitive, then don't. But it's also a very good game, and it probably would be on this list as well. But whatever. All right, let us move on
Yep,
to your number nine.
yep. And I totally agree with you. By the way, on Link Between Worlds, I think it's one of the best games on the 3DS.
Easy.
Okay, so here's something for you for number nine. What game, Justin, started its life as Final Fantasy VII, but later they said, "Nah, this isn't going to be Final Fantasy VII. This is going to be the sequel to Chrono Trigger."
Uh, I mean, okay, so let's back up a little bit. I think I know what you're going to say. However, we have to remember there were like three different games in the running to being Final Fantasy VII. So, so
So the
it's either
game I'm talking, but you go ahead and say what you're going to say.
it's got to be either Xenogears, Chrono Cross, or Parasite Eve. I think those all three. I think all three of those stories were at one point. There might have been even a fourth one. I think that all would have been Final Fantasy VII, but got turned down.
Yep. Yep. And I'm my pronunciation and yours may differ, but I'm not. I don't know which one's right. I always call it Xenogears, so I'm gonna say that a million times. But that's
Works.
my number nine game. So legend has it that Xenogears began as Final Fantasy VII. It was like the prototype. Okay, we're gonna make this next game, and it's the prototype. They had then they said that they were gonna do this game is gonna be a sequel to Chrono Trigger. It's gonna involve time travel,
Hmm.
which it did involve the time travel. So long story short, Xenogears was neither of those games. It was not Final Fantasy. It was not in the same universe as Final Fantasy. It is not Chrono Trigger, but it did have some time travel elements and stuff like that, and definitely a lot of like outer space and sci-fi elements. Um, it ended up being its own thing, but I think we're all as gamers we're better off for that fact that it ended up being its own thing. So to me, Xenogears, like when you start the game, first of all, it's got really cool FMVs and anime style scenes that all throughout, like at the very important points of the game, you're treated to like and this is like long before Persona, which Persona does a fantastic job of the anime style scenes, but long before that, in the late 90s when PS1 was like the most powerful console you could get, Xenogears did that, and it was like the coolest thing that we had access to because it was like watching an anime, even though it was in standard definition. It wasn't in HD or nothing like that. So the anime cutscenes definitely got bonus points for me. the first towns that you go to, like it feels like a lived-in world, which I like that. I think they did a good job of that. That's kind of hit and miss because at some parts of the game it feels like a little emptier than others, but early in the game you get that vibe, like the lived-in vibe. Um, I think they did a good job of 3D, even though to me the controls are not perfect. Like you have to rotate the world around you, kind of like with
Yeah.
the older buttons. Um, but the controls aren't perfect. But I think they did a good job with the 3D elements.
I
Um,
I
the
think that was
soundtrack is
a limitation of the time though, because
yeah,
I don't think that I think that was out before DualShock maybe.
could have been. It was early,
Yeah.
mid '90s, mid '90s to late '90s. Um, the soundtrack is incredible in Xenogears, and it's by Yasunori Mitsuda, same person who composed Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross.
Yep.
He did a tremendous job on the soundtrack for Xenogears. It's different than Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross, but you can actually still hear his style coming through. In certain
Hmm.
songs, you hear it more than others. The battle system is really fun in Xenogears. I think and I mentioned, I'm going to make minor criticisms throughout this, but the random encounters are a little high for my
Yes.
taste. Too
Hmm.
many random encounters in Xenogears. We can agree on that, but battles are fun. I mean, yes, it'll get grindy and get a little tedious, but they alleviate that with a pretty unique combo system where like you whichever buttons you press and whichever tendencies like you have, you'll start to unlock combos based on what you use in battle. And then they have gear battles. Like later on, you get into gears, and that adds different elements to the battling. Yep, and the gear battles are pretty nice. There's a character in Xenogears that I was really enamored with when I was younger and playing this game, and I'd probably say his name wrong, but Saitan or Citan or whoever,
Oh,
I call him Saitan,
yeah.
but he's a very complex character. Some spoiler alert, here. Is Saitan's like always a step ahead of you. So whatever he's saying to the character is like really interesting because you're kind of like as the protagonist in Xenogears, you're kind of in the dark. And by the way, this is differs from Chrono Trigger. It's not a silent protagonist. Like he has dialogue throughout the
Yeah.
game, and he's kind of like a tortured guy. Like
Yeah.
uh, he like is okay. So spoilers, heavy spoilers. So your main character protagonist turns out then this game leans into all this psychology stuff, but he turns out to have multiple personalities, and they go into him having he has like the id, the ego, and the super ego, and he's got this personality where he just freaks out and like destroys everything, and especially if he's piloting a gear, he'll like
Hmm.
just destroy the whole town and everything. But Saitan is always like a step ahead of your character. He always knows what's going on, so anytime he starts like giving exposition, I'm like paying attention to every word because he knows stuff. Then it turns out later on that he's actually like a double agent, and a spy, and he's like keeping tabs on you the whole time. But the game it has a very like I don't know, the plot goes in a lot of different directions. That's why it's my number nine. It's not higher on the list, is because the plot and the story is cool, but it does go off into different directions. It's not I don't know. It's a little confusing at times. It's a
Yeah.
little hard to follow at times.
It's not focused at all.
Yeah, it loses some focus. It's still by all means this is a great game and go play it. But then you have the second disc. There's so much I guess so many gamers are split on their opinions on the second disc. Most people will say, "Oh, the second disc is unfinished. They just rushed it out because they didn't have time. They had to push the game out as fast as possible, so the second disc is unfinished." To me, the second disc is actually when I played the game, I liked it. It was a different pace. Like it was more giving you, um, a lot of story and a lot of different things and less battling, less fights and stuff like that. But I like the second disc. I don't think it's like the best part of the game, but I think it was good enough. And Xenogears is a really unique game. Sci-fi. If you like sci-fi, if you like psychology, and if you like anime, um, check this game out. It's got some really cool characters, and the battle systems is fun. I haven't really played any games since Xenogears that I would say have the same battle system. It's pretty unique overall. What's your opinions on Xenogears?
All right, so a few things. Gosh, we could do a whole podcast or one of these just on
We
Xenogears
might do
and
that at some point.
maybe. Um, Number one battle system that is similar. Actually, there might be two, but one comes to mind immediately is Legend of Legaia, also on PlayStation 1. It's not the exact same, but it does have like a combo system where you have your punches and your kicks, and then they can form combos and stuff. It's also an RPG. It's pretty good. If you haven't played it, check it out. It's actually pretty decent. There's also a PlayStation 2 sequel, I think. But anyway, I digress. I think Xenogears is uh it's definitely one of those games where you I have to agree on the side of the second disc being unfinished. Not completely. I think there was you could tell that there was a direction they wanted to go in, but they couldn't either I don't know if they could commit or had the budget or what the case was, but there was something that you could tell was missing. And what I'm hoping is because Square has been going back through their back catalog as of late and re-releasing games and kind of finishing games, so to speak. Example is Saga Frontier. They added in like can't remember that dude's name. They added in that extra scenario that they cut originally. But they're going back through. But the thing about Xenogears is it's a little bit more complicated because a lot of the staff in Xenogears left and created Monolith, and they're in charge of the Xenoblade Chronicles series now. Xenoblade, Xenogears. But and the interesting thing about that is before that they made Xenosaga. So for those who don't know, Xenogears was going to do like the Star Wars thing and was going to be like a uh multi-part series, and I can't remember which one Xenogears was. It was like five, six, seven, somewhere on the timeline, right from the rip. And um so it was like boom, right in the middle. But the interesting thing is this was like a year or two ago when I researched all this, but like the Xenosaga games and the Xenoblade games, that all of them are connected to Xenogears, like all of them. Like I think even Xenoblade Chronicles 3 just came out with, now this is a spoiler. I think it was Future Imperfect or something like that is the DLC, and it ties into Xenosaga. And there's the ending of Xenosaga that ties into Xenogears, and it just kind of all loops in. And that was supposedly like if they never split from Square, and I think as Xenogears did a little bit better, then they would have just kept going. But then, they broke from Square and they made Xenosaga and then they made Xenoblade and blah blah blah. But all that to say, even though Xenogears itself has its flaws, it did give us the first glimpse as to what this plan was supposed to be, and it's incredibly interesting. It has religious connotations to it. It has psychological connotation. It like really makes you think about what it is to be a person at times. The cast of characters in Xenogears is incredible. Like, it's and like you said, the anime cutscenes. Like, I still think about like the first town situation to this day. Like, and they had like Easter eggs where you could see like Luca as a from Chrono Trigger as like a poster, and I think even Tifa was her a poster on there as well. And there's a lot to say about this game, and like it really brought to the forefront like how cool mech based RPGs can be. And that's one. If you want to see, I don't have this game on Switch. I had it on Wii U and I loved it, but this was kind of like what came after, and you can tell like a lot of the design is the same. Um, it's I actually am dying to get this on Switch again so that I can play through it because it's an incredible game too. But any of the Xeno games. Take your pick. They're all great. Xenosaga is way more story based than uh what's the word? Like battles and stuff. But uh, you know, all of them are good. Monolith is great, you know, etc. Anyway, that's all I had. That was my tangent.
Yep. Awesome game. If you like anime and you like Evangelion, that's what it kind of reminds me of a little
Yeah,
bit at
good
times.
call. Yep. 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 Agreed.